0.30. The video. So my ex-wife cheated on me, my parents took her side, and now they want my help after she screwed them over too. Nope, not happening. Let me give you the backstory first. When I 29, male met Amanda ex-wife, 27th female. I thought she was a dream come true. She had that perfect blend of confidence and charm that could make anyone feel like the most important person in the room. She was ambitious, talked about big goals for her career, and had this infectious energy that made me want to be better for her. Naturally, my parents loved her. Yarawan Chontwaitin, one or twin, one mean why wouldn't they? Amanda had this uncanny ability to make people adore her, even if it was all just an act from the moment I introduced Amanda to my parents. Linda and Ron, it was like they adopted her as their own daughter. My mom would gush about how lucky I was to find someone like her. And my dad, he acted like Amanda could walk on water. They'd never been this enthusiastic about any of my past relationships. Looking back, I should have seen it as a warning sign, but at the time I thought it was great that everyone got along so well. Amanda, R0131, was manipulative. She didn't just win my parents over with her charm, she strategically made herself indispensable to them. She'd remember their birthdays, bring them little gifts, and spend hours chatting with my mom about her dreams of building a family. Meanwhile, she'd flatter my dad by asking for advice about investments or her non-existent 401k. By the time we got engaged, they were practically begging me to lock it down with her. I didn't mind the attention Amanda got from my parents. At first, it felt good knowing they approved. 0159. But over time, I noticed something unsettling. My parents started siding with Amanda on everything. If we disagreed about where to live, how to decorate, or even what to have for dinner, my mom and dad would take Amanda's side without fail. It's just because they like you. I told Amanda one night when she jokingly pointed out how much my mom fussed over her. She smirked and said, "Well, maybe you should listen to them more." I laughed it off, but that comment stuck with me. The real trouble started after we got married. Amanda began. 0257. The big guns, my parents. I was talking to your mom today, she'd say casually, and she mentioned how lucky I am to have a husband who can provide so well. She said, if I wanted to take a break from work, I should. Sure enough, when I brought it up with my mom, she was all for it. Amanda has a point, my mom said during dinner one night. Why should she stress herself out if you're capable of providing for both of you? My dad chimed in. Too happy wife, happy life. Son, if Amanda's happy, you'll be happy. I tried to explain that I wasn't comfortable being the sole. 0355. Through her phone, like she'd been doing it her whole life. When I asked what she'd done all day, she shrugged and said, relaxing. I needed this. That was the beginning of the end. My parents, meanwhile, acted like Amanda had made the ultimate sacrifice by quitting her job. They praised her for putting our marriage first and constantly reminded me how lucky I was to have a wife like her. What I didn't realize at the time was that Amanda wasn't just manipulating me. She was manipulating my parents, too. She had them wrapped around her finger. 453, time to settle into this homemaker role she talked about. I assumed she'd use the time to manage the house, cook some meals. Maybe Amanda could find hobbies that didn't involve scrolling endlessly through Instagram. Boy, was I mistaken. It didn't take long for reality to hit me like a ton of bricks. Amanda had no interest in being a homemaker. She wanted to be treated like royalty. Household chores? Not her thing. Cooking? She once made spaghetti with jarred sauce, called it a gourmet meal, and expected me to praise her effort. Cleaning? That's what we have a vacuum for, she'd say, conveniently forgetting that someone actually had to use it. Instead, Amanda treated her days like an extended vacation. Mornings were for sipping overpriced lattes she insisted I buy before I left for work. By the afternoon, she'd be lounging on the couch, binge-watching reality shows or scrolling on her phone like it was her job. She could easily spend hours crafting the perfect selfie, editing it with filters, and posting it with captions like, "Life is beautiful when you're loved and supported." Supported? More like sponsored. And then there was the spending. With her income gone, every dollar came from my paycheck. But Amanda had zero understanding of a budget. She was great at convincing me we needed things, though. "This new throw blanket is essential for the living room vibe," she'd say, holding up a $200 price tag. Or, "I found this drink subscription. It's totally worth it. We deserve to treat ourselves." When I brought up the idea of her contributing more, I wasn't asking for a complete transformation into Martha Stewart, just a bit of effort. But every time I mentioned it, Amanda would twist the narrative. "Oh, so now you regret letting me quit my job?" she'd snap. "You said you'd support me. If I'd known you'd throw it in my face, I wouldn't have done it." I was stuck. If I pushed back, I was unsupportive. If I stayed quiet, I grew more resentful every day. The worst part wasn't even Amanda's behavior. It was my parents. Whenever I shared my frustrations with them, they acted like Amanda was faultless. "She's just adjusting," my mom would say. "Give her some time. Being a homemaker is harder than it looks." Harder than it looks? Amanda hadn't touched the vacuum since she quit working, while I was pulling overtime to keep up with her shopping sprees. My dad wasn't much better. "You're overreacting," he said one evening when I vented. "Amanda's a good woman. She just needs your support. Stop nagging her." It was maddening. Not only were my parents dismissing my concerns, but they were also enabling Amanda's behavior. Anytime I tried to establish boundaries or address the imbalance in our relationship, Amanda would run to my mom, and my mom would lecture me about being more understanding. One evening, after a tough day at work, I walked into total chaos. Dirty dishes overflowed in the sink, laundry was scattered across the living room, and Amanda was sprawled on the couch, glued to her phone. She didn't even glance up when I entered. "Rough day?" I asked, trying to keep my annoyance in check. "Yeah," she sighed dramatically. "I've been trying to figure out which filter looks best for this post. It's exhausting." I stared at her, waiting for her to laugh or admit she was kidding. She didn't. "Seriously, Amanda?" I said, raising my voice. "The house is a mess, and you're worried about Instagram filters?" She rolled her eyes. "I'll clean tomorrow. Don't start with me. I've had a long day." That was Amanda's go-to excuse. She'd had a long day. A long day doing what? While I worked hard to provide for us, she was too exhausted to even load the dishwasher. I told myself I'd talk to her later, once we'd both cooled down. But before I got the chance, Amanda played her trump card. She involved my parents. The next morning, she called my mom in tears, complaining that I didn't appreciate her and was always criticizing her. By the time I got to work, I had a voicemail from my mom berating me. "You need to stop being so hard on Amanda," she said. "She's doing her best, and you're just making her feel unappreciated." Unappreciated? What exactly was I supposed to appreciate? The constant mess, the endless spending, or the fact that I was funding her lazy lifestyle while burning myself out? To make matters worse, Amanda and my parents had formed an unbreakable alliance. Anytime we argued, she'd run to them for backup, and they'd defend her like she was some fragile flower who needed protection from her terrible husband. "Marriage is about compromise," my dad said one evening after Amanda complained to him about me. "If Amanda needs time to figure things out, give it to her." Figure things out? We were supposed to be building a life together, not playing this one-sided game where I worked non-stop, while Amanda pretended to be busy. The breaking point came a few weeks later, when Amanda demanded we hire a house cleaner. "You're obviously too busy to clean," she said, "and I'm overwhelmed. It'll help us both." I laughed, thinking she was joking. "Overwhelmed with what? Instagram captions?" Her face hardened. "Wow, now you're just being mean. Maybe I'll stay at your mom's for a few days. At least she appreciates me." And she did. Amanda packed her bags and spent the weekend at my parents' house, where they treated her like royalty. My mom called that Saturday to scold me again. "You're so lucky to have Amanda," she said. "You need to step up as a husband. She's an amazing woman." That line stuck with me. Lucky? For what? Amanda had somehow turned my parents into her biggest fans, and no matter how hard I worked or how much I sacrificed, I was always the villain in their eyes. I felt like a failure as a husband simply because I dared to expect something in return. It was becoming clear just how deeply Amanda's manipulation ran. She didn't just want to ride on my efforts. She wanted me to feel bad for questioning it. And my parents? They were eager to help her keep me in check. At the time, I had no idea that things were about to spiral further out of control. Although tensions between Amanda and me were at their peak, I kept convincing myself it was just a rough period. Every marriage has highs and lows, right? I thought if I worked harder, communicated more effectively, or gave her a little more time, things would eventually get better. But Amanda wasn't interested in fixing anything. She was too busy fine-tuning her performance. Her odd behavior became more apparent a few months after she left her job. She was constantly glued to her phone. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, most people spend too much time on their devices these days. But Amanda wasn't just scrolling aimlessly. She would laugh at messages, quickly lock her screen when I walked by, and sometimes leave the room to take calls. One evening, I got home late to find the house in its usual chaotic state. Takeout containers littered the coffee table, laundry was scattered everywhere, and Amanda was on the couch with her phone in hand. She barely acknowledged my arrival, muttering a half-hearted, "Hey." Dropping my bag, I asked, "What's for dinner?" Without even looking up, she replied, "I didn't know when you'd be home, so I didn't cook anything." "You didn't cook anything?" I snapped. "Amanda, I've been working all day. The least you could do is make dinner." Finally looking up, she rolled her eyes. "I'm not your maid, Ethan. If you're hungry, there's a frozen pizza in the freezer." Exhausted and fed up, I bit back my frustration. Instead, I heated up the pizza and ate it alone, while Amanda stayed on the couch, giggling at her phone. That night, something in me broke. I began paying closer attention to her actions. It wasn't just her laziness or entitlement. It was how secretive she had become. Her phone was always on silent, and she never left it unattended. When I asked what she was doing, she'd give vague answers like, "Just chatting with friends," or "looking at funny memes." One Saturday morning, she went out to meet a friend for coffee, which wasn't unusual since she loved spending time with her girlfriends. I appreciated the peace and quiet. But when she came back, she was uncharacteristically cheerful, humming a tune with her phone in hand and a big grin on her face. "Good coffee?" I asked. "The best," she replied, flashing a smile that seemed fake. That's when I decided to dig deeper. A few days later, Amanda left her phone on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. Normally, she never let it out of her sight. This was my opportunity. I hesitated, telling myself it would be wrong to invade her privacy. But all the red flags I had ignored came flooding back. I needed answers. I picked up her phone and unlocked it. Yes, I knew her passcode. I went straight to her messages and found them. A string of texts from someone named Jake. "Jake, I can't stop thinking about last night." "Amanda, same here. You make me feel so alive." "Jake, when can I see you again?" "Amanda, soon, I promise. Just need to keep Ethan off my back." It felt like the ground had collapsed beneath me. My heart raced, my hands trembled, and I struggled to process what I was seeing. She had been cheating on me, likely for months. From the messages, it was obvious they'd been meeting in person. I read through more of their disgusting exchanges. Amanda had described me to Jake as boring, overly focused on work, and constantly nagging her. She painted herself as a victim while trashing me and enjoying the life I worked hard to provide. When Amanda came out of the shower, I was sitting in the living room with her phone in my hand. "What's this?" I asked, holding up the screen with Jake's messages. Her face turned pale for a moment, but then she smirked as if she thought she could talk her way out of it. "Ethan, it's not what you think," she said. "Don't," I snapped. "Don't insult my intelligence. I've read everything, Amanda. I know you've been cheating." Her expression hardened, and she crossed her arms. "Well, maybe if you paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere." I was stunned by her audacity. She wasn't even denying it. She was blaming me. "That's your excuse?" I shot back. "I work my ass off to support you, and this is how you repay me? By sleeping with some random guy?" She shrugged, completely unapologetic. "Jake makes me feel special, something you haven't done in a long time." That was it. I was done. I told her to pack her things and leave. She tried to argue, claiming she had nowhere to go, but I didn't care. She could stay with Jake for all I cared. "You can't kick me out," she screamed. "Your parents will never forgive you." I laughed bitterly. "Good luck with that, Amanda. Go ahead and tell them the truth. Let's see how they feel about you now." What I didn't realize was that Amanda had no intention of coming clean to my parents. Instead, she flipped the story completely. By the time she left, I thought I'd finally be able to move forward. But Amanda wasn't finished making my life miserable. Not by a long shot. Ruining our marriage wasn't enough for her. She had to drag my family down with her, and the worst part? They let her. Just a few days after Amanda moved out, my mom called me. The second I picked up, she was already fuming. "How could you do this to Amanda?" she snapped. "Do what?" I asked, genuinely baffled. "Kick her out! She's heartbroken, Ethan. She told us everything." When my mom said everything, I assumed she meant the truth. I thought Amanda had come clean about Jake and was trying to manipulate them into feeling sorry for her. But no, she had spun an entirely different story. One where I was the villain. "She told us about your cheating," my mom continued, her voice full of disdain. "How you've been emotionally neglecting her for months, staying out late, probably with another woman. How could you betray her like that?" It took me a moment to process what I was hearing. Amanda accused me of cheating? The sheer boldness of her lies was almost impressive. "That's not what happened," I said, struggling to stay calm. "Amanda's the one who cheated. She's been seeing some guy named Jake for months. I have proof." "Proof? Oh, so now you're just making excuses?" My mom shot back. "That poor girl has been doing everything she can to make your marriage work, and you threw her out like garbage. We raised you better than this, Ethan." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Amanda had completely flipped the narrative, and my parents had bought her lies without even bothering to ask for my side of the story. "She's staying with us now," my mom added, "and frankly, I think you owe her an apology." An apology? For what? For being the only one in this mess who wasn't lying or cheating? For working extra hours to support a wife who spent her days texting another man? I was furious. But arguing with my mom was pointless. Amanda had her wrapped around her finger. In the weeks that followed, things went from bad to worse. Amanda had turned my parents into her personal army, and they were more than willing to fight for her. They called me constantly, blaming me for ruining the marriage. My mom even suggested therapy to work through my issues so Amanda and I could reconcile. "She still loves you," my mom insisted one evening. "She's just hurt. If you show her you're willing to change, maybe you can fix things." Fix things? Amanda was living in their house, sleeping in the guest room I had helped renovate, and laughing at how easily she had duped them. The thought of fixing anything with her made my stomach churn. But my parents didn't stop there. They dragged other family members into the drama. Soon, I was getting texts and calls from cousins, aunts, and even my grandmother. They all parroted the same nonsense. I had betrayed Amanda, and they were disappointed in me. "She's been through so much," one cousin said. "Your mom told me she's crying herself to sleep every night." "Yeah," I replied bitterly, right into Jake's arms. But no one believed me. Amanda had painted herself as the perfect victim, and I was the cold, unfaithful husband who threw her out for no reason. It didn't matter how much evidence I had or how many times I tried to explain the truth. Amanda played her role flawlessly, and my family ate it up. The divorce, thankfully, was the one part of this nightmare that didn't drag on. Amanda and I had signed a prenuptial agreement before our marriage, so she couldn't go after my assets or demand spousal support. The split was clean and quick. She tried to contest it, claiming she deserved more after everything I'd put her through, but her lawyer shut it down immediately. The prenup was ironclad. Within a month, it was over. Our marriage was legally dissolved, and Amanda was out of my life, or so I thought. A month later, I found out Amanda had married Jake. That's right, the same guy she had been sneaking around with while I was working overtime to support her. They had a small courthouse wedding, nothing extravagant, but the real shock? My parents were there. I found out through Facebook. My mom had posted a picture of Amanda and Jake, beaming, with a caption that read, "Wishing Amanda all the happiness she deserves. She's like a daughter to us, and we'll always support her." I stared at the post, my blood boiling. They were supporting her, after everything. After she lied, cheated, and dragged my name through the mud. Furious, I called my mom immediately. "You went to Amanda's wedding?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger. "Of course we did," she replied, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "Amanda's still family to us, Ethan. Just because you couldn't make your marriage work doesn't mean we have to cut her out of our lives." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're seriously choosing her over your own son?" "We're not choosing anyone," she said, her tone irritatingly calm. "We just think Amanda deserves to be happy, and we're not going to let your bitterness ruin that for her." Bitterness. That was rich, coming from the woman who had taken in my cheating ex-wife and treated her like a saint. That was the moment I decided I was done. Done trying to explain myself. Done trying to win back a family that had so easily turned against me. Done being the scapegoat for Amanda's lies. Cutting ties wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I blocked my parents' numbers, unfollowed them on social media, and stopped attending family events. I knew they would never admit they were wrong, and honestly, I didn't need their approval anymore. Amanda had won them over, but she was no longer my problem. Let them deal with her drama and deception. Let them see the truth for themselves, because eventually they would. People like Amanda can't keep up the act forever. As for me, I turned my focus toward rebuilding my life. Therapy helped me work through the betrayal, and I threw myself into my job and hobbies. Over time, the anger and resentment began to fade, replaced by a sense of liberation. I was finally free, free from Amanda, free from my parents, and free from the toxic cycle I had been trapped in for so long. Eventually, I began moving forward, and that's when I met Sophia. We crossed paths through mutual friends at an intimate dinner gathering. At the time, I wasn't actively searching for a relationship. I still had plenty of emotional baggage to unpack. But Sophia was impossible to overlook. She was intelligent, funny, and had a genuine warmth about her that I hadn't experienced in years. Our first date was simple: coffee and a stroll through the park. Yet, it was the first time in what felt like forever that I could truly let my guard down. Sophia wasn't into playing games or using manipulation. She was just herself. As our relationship blossomed, so did my confidence. For the first time, I felt like I was part of a real partnership, not some staged performance. Sophia encouraged me to embrace my authentic self, flaws included, and she didn't hesitate to call me out when I fell back into old habits of trying to please everyone but myself. When we got engaged, I knew wedding planning might get complicated. Not because of Sophia, who was as laid back as they come, but because of the inevitable drama my parents would stir up. At first, I wrestled with whether or not to invite them. A part of me thought this could be the olive branch needed to mend things, but the more I reflected on it, the clearer it became. They didn't deserve a role in this new chapter of my life. They made their choice, I told Sophia one evening as we relaxed on the couch. They picked Amanda over me, over the truth, over our family. I'm not giving them the opportunity to ruin this. Sophia nodded, her expression gentle. I just want you to be happy, Ethan. This day is about us, not them. Of course, word of the wedding spread quickly. Nothing stays quiet in families like mine. My mom started calling, leaving voicemails laced with guilt trips and fake tears. Ethan, we're your parents. How could you not invite us to your wedding? Family is family, she pleaded. I didn't respond. Next came my dad, trying his usual tough love tactic. You're being ridiculous, he said in one message. Sophia deserves to understand the importance of family, and you're robbing her of that by shutting us out. Nice try, Dad. Even extended family decided to get involved. My aunt sent me a long message on Facebook, urging me to let bygones be bygones because life's too short to hold grudges. What none of them seemed to understand, or care to, was that this wasn't about holding onto a grudge. It was about safeguarding my peace. Time and again, my parents had proven that Amanda's lies mattered more to them than my truth. Why would I let them be a part of one of the happiest days of my life? Sophia and I had the wedding we truly wanted. Small, intimate, and completely free of drama. The people who mattered were there. Friends who had stood by me through the worst. Family members who had taken the time to hear my side, and Sophia's parents, who had treated me like family from the start. My parents' absence wasn't just noticeable, it was freeing. For the first time, I didn't feel the weight of their expectations or the sting of their judgment. I could fully savor the moment, celebrating the love Sophia and I had built without the shadow of my past looming over us. As we exchanged vows, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't realized I needed. Amanda, my parents, the betrayal. They were all part of a chapter I had finally put behind me. After the wedding, I heard through a cousin that my mom was heartbroken about not being invited, and that my dad had called me selfish for excluding them. But their opinions no longer carried weight. I had created a life I was proud of, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me. My parents could cling to their version of the story, the one where Amanda was the innocent victim and I was the villain. I had no desire to rewrite it for them. They could remain in their bubble of lies. I was too busy living in the truth.